In just seconds, one of Britain's most beloved comedians completely lost his temper on live television, shut down a host's aggressive questioning, and stormed off set in front of millions of shocked viewers. What started as a simple chat turned into one of the most explosive meltdowns daytime TV has ever witnessed. Before we dive into this absolute chaos, make sure you subscribe to this channel. We bring you daily videos exposing Britain's darkest scandals, the confrontations they don't want you to see, and the moments that make headlines. Last night, Rowan Atkinson walked onto the Lorraine show, expecting to talk about his latest project. What he got instead was an ambush that spiraled completely out of control. The tension in that studio was thick from the very first moment he sat down, and within minutes, the whole thing exploded into a full-blown row that ended with Atkinson walking off set while cameras were still rolling. The morning started normally enough. Atkinson came out, waved to the audience, and took his seat across from Lorraine. The crew were adjusting cameras, the audience was clapping, and everything seemed fine. But anyone watching closely could see something was already off. Lorraine had this look on her face, this weird smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She was shuffling papers on her desk, glancing at them, then glancing at Rowan, like she was preparing for something. "Rowan, lovely to have you here," Lorraine started, but her voice had an edge to it, not the usual warm tone she's known for. Something sharper. "Thank you for having me," Rowan replied politely, settling into his chair. He looked relaxed, maybe a bit tired, but friendly enough. "Now," Lorraine continued, leaning forward, "we need to talk about some things you've said recently. Some pretty controversial things, actually." Rowan's expression changed slightly. His eyebrows went up just a bit. "Controversial? I'm not sure what you mean." "Oh, I think you know exactly what I mean," Lorraine said, and there was this tone in her voice now, like she was accusing him of something. "Your comments about free speech, about cancel culture. You've been quite vocal, haven't you?" The audience went quiet. You could feel the mood shift right there. This wasn't going to be a fun, light chat about comedy. This was something else entirely. "I've shared my views, yes," Rowan said carefully. "I believe in the importance of free expression. I've been consistent about that for years. But some people find your views offensive." Lorraine shot back quickly, barely letting him finish. "Some people think you're defending hate speech." Rowan blinked, clearly taken aback. "That's absolutely not what I'm doing. I've never defended hate speech. I've defended the right to make jokes, to discuss difficult topics, to not live in fear of saying the wrong thing." "But where's the line, Rowan?" Lorraine pressed, her voice getting louder. "Where's the line between free speech and just being cruel? Because a lot of people watching right now think you've crossed it." "Have they said that? Or are you saying that?" Rowan asked, and his voice was still calm, but you could hear the irritation creeping in. "Because it sounds like you're putting words in people's mouths." Lorraine's face flushed a bit red. "I'm asking the questions people want answered. That's my job." "Your job is to have a conversation," Rowan replied, his tone a bit firmer now. "Not to attack someone the moment they sit down." "I'm not attacking you," Lorraine said, but she absolutely was. Anyone watching could see it. "I'm holding you accountable." "Accountable for what exactly?" Rowan asked, leaning forward now. "For having an opinion? For believing that comedy should be allowed to push boundaries? For defending people who use comedy as an excuse to bully others?" Lorraine snapped back. "For acting like your right to make a joke is more important than someone else's right to feel safe." That's when you could see Rowan's patience starting to crack. His jaw tightened, his hands gripped the armrests of his chair. "That's a complete misrepresentation of everything I've ever said," he replied, his voice harder now. "I have never, ever defended bullying. What I've defended is the ability of artists and comedians to explore difficult subjects without being shut down immediately." "But who decides what's difficult and what's just offensive?" Lorraine challenged, not backing down at all. "You? A bunch of wealthy comedians who've never experienced real discrimination?" The audience gasped a bit at that one. That was a direct hit, and Lorraine knew it. Rowan stared at her for a long moment. "That's quite a judgment you're making about people you don't know." "I know what you've said publicly," Lorraine fired back. "I know you've criticized people for being offended. I know you've mocked the idea of trigger warnings and safe spaces. I've questioned whether we've gone too far in one direction," Rowan said, his voice rising slightly. That's not the same as mocking people's pain. There's a huge difference. Is there though? Lorraine asked, tilting her head in this really condescending way. Because, from where I'm sitting, it looks like you just don't want to deal with the consequences of what you say. Rowan laughed. But it wasn't a happy laugh. It was sharp and bitter. Consequences? You mean being ambushed on a morning talk show by someone who's clearly made up their mind before I even arrived? I haven't made up anything, Lorraine insisted, but her voice was getting defensive now. I'm asking legitimate questions. No, you're not, Rowan said flatly. You're trying to paint me as some villain because I don't agree with every single aspect of modern sensitivity culture. That's not a question. That's an accusation. Lorraine shifted in her seat, and you could see she was getting rattled. But instead of backing off, she doubled down. Let's talk about your comedy then, she said, changing tactics. Mr. Bean, a character who often appears foolish, who bumbles around, who doesn't speak properly. Some people have said that character mocks people with disabilities. The look on Rowan's face at that moment was pure disbelief. His mouth actually fell open slightly. Are you serious right now? He asked quietly. It's a valid criticism that's been raised, Lorraine said. But even she seemed to know she'd gone too far with that one. Mr. Bean is a physical comedy character in the tradition of Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, Rowan said, and his voice was shaking now with anger. To suggest that he mocks disabled people is not just wrong, it's deeply insulting to decades of physical comedy, and to me, personally. But you can see how some people might interpret it that way, Lorraine pushed. No, actually I can't, Rowan snapped. And the fact that you're even suggesting it shows how absurd this whole conversation has become. You're literally inventing controversies now. I'm not inventing anything, Lorraine said, her voice getting loud and defensive. These are conversations happening online, conversations about your work and your views. Conversations with who? Rowan demanded. 3 people on Twitter? 5 people with blogs? You're acting like there's some massive movement against me, when what you really have is a handful of people looking for something to be angry about, and you're giving them a platform to do it. The tension was absolutely unbearable now. The studio audience was dead silent. The camera crew didn't know where to look. And Lorraine and Rowan were staring at each other like 2 people who genuinely couldn't stand each other in that moment. I'm giving voice to legitimate concerns, Lorraine said. But her voice was wavering now. No, you're stirring up drama for ratings, Rowan shot back. That's what this is. You booked me on this show, probably promised my team it would be a nice chat, and then you planned this whole attack from the start. That's not true, Lorraine protested, but she didn't sound convincing. Isn't it? Rowan challenged. Because from where I'm sitting, this was a setup from the moment I walked through that door. Every question designed to make me look bad. Every response from you dismissing what I actually believe. Lorraine's face was properly red now. You're being paranoid. I'm being observant, Rowan corrected. And I'm observing that you've got no interest in actually understanding my position. You just want a viral moment. If you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't do interviews, Lorraine said. And that was probably the worst thing she could have said at that moment. Rowan went very still. When he spoke again, his voice was cold and controlled. I can handle tough questions just fine, Lorraine. What I can't handle is dishonesty. And this entire interview has been dishonest from the start. You've twisted my words, invented controversies that don't exist. And now you're acting like I'm the problem for pushing back. I haven't twisted anything, Lorraine insisted. But she was getting flustered now, losing her composure. You literally just suggested Mr. Bean mocks disabled people, Rowan said, his voice getting louder. That's not twisting? That's not reaching for something that isn't there? I was raising a point of discussion, Lorraine tried to explain. No, you were trying to create a headline, Rowan interrupted. That's all this is. You want to be able to say Rowan Atkinson defends controversial character, or some rubbish like that. That's not fair, Lorraine said weakly. Fair? Rowan's voice went up several notches. You want to talk about fair? What's fair about ambushing someone on your show? What's fair about putting words in their mouth and then acting shocked when they defend themselves? The studio was electric with tension now. You could see people in the audience exchanging glances, mouths hanging open. This was not what anyone expected from a Monday morning chat show. I think we should take a break, Lorraine suggested, reaching for an escape route. Oh no, we're not taking a break, Rowan said firmly. You started this, let's finish it. Let's talk about what this really is. I don't know what you mean, Lorraine said. But she looked genuinely worried now. This is about you trying to look relevant, Rowan said bluntly. Trying to show that you're on the right side of these cultural debates by attacking someone who actually thinks about these issues carefully, instead of just jumping on whatever bandwagon is currently fashionable. That's a horrible thing to say, Lorraine replied. And she looked hurt, but also angry. Is it worse than suggesting my life's work mocks disabled people? Rowan asked pointedly. Because that's what you just did. And you did it on live television, knowing I'd have to respond, knowing it would create exactly this kind of conflict. You're twisting this around, Lorraine said, her voice rising to match his. I'm pointing out what you're doing, Rowan corrected. And clearly you don't like it when someone turns the mirror back on you. This is my show, Lorraine said, and there was real anger in her voice now. My show, my questions, and my reputation, Rowan shot back. My career, my legacy. And you're sitting there casually throwing around accusations and insinuations like they're nothing, like they don't matter. I never accused you of anything, Lorraine protested, but that was obviously not true. Every single thing you've said since I sat down has been an accusation, Rowan said, his voice shaking with anger now. You've questioned my character, my work, my intentions, everything. Because people have questions, Lorraine said desperately. What people? Rowan demanded. Name them. Who are these people with all these concerns? Because I think you're hiding behind this vague, people are saying nonsense to avoid taking responsibility for your own views. That hit a nerve. Lorraine's eyes flashed with anger. I'm a journalist, she said hotly. I ask the questions that need to be asked. You're a talk show host, Rowan corrected bluntly. And right now, you're doing a terrible job of it. A journalist would listen to answers. A journalist would engage with what I'm actually saying, instead of just waiting for their next gotcha moment. I am listening, Lorraine snapped. No, you're not, Rowan said firmly. You haven't listened to a single thing I've said. You've already decided who I am and what I believe, and nothing I say is going to change that. The two of them were properly shouting now, voices overlapping, both trying to talk over each other. The producers in the background were making frantic gestures, clearly trying to figure out how to handle this complete disaster unfolding live. This is ridiculous, Lorraine said, throwing her hands up. Absolutely ridiculous. Finally, something we agree on, Rowan said bitterly. This whole thing is ridiculous. This interview is ridiculous. The premise is ridiculous. If you're so unhappy, maybe you should leave, Lorraine said. And the moment those words left her mouth, you could see her realize she'd made a mistake. Rowan went very quiet. He looked at her for a long moment. You know what? He said calmly. I think I will. What? Lorraine looked panicked now. I'm leaving, Rowan said, standing up. I'm not going to sit here and be insulted for another minute. Rowan, come on, Lorraine said, and her tone completely changed now, suddenly trying to be conciliatory. Let's just calm down and have a proper conversation. We're past that, don't you think? Rowan said, unclipping his microphone. You had your chance for a proper conversation. You chose to do this instead. You're being unprofessional, Lorraine said, and that was absolutely the wrong thing to say. Rowan actually laughed at that. I'm being unprofessional? That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. You spend 20 minutes attacking me, suggesting my work is offensive, making up controversies, and I'm the unprofessional one for refusing to sit here and take it. I didn't attack you, Lorraine said weakly. Yes, you bloody well did, Rowan said, and there was real heat in his voice now. From the very first question, you came at me like I'd done something wrong, like I owed you some kind of apology for having opinions you disagree with. That's not what happened, Lorraine insisted, but she looked around the studio like she was hoping someone would back her up. Nobody did. That's exactly what happened, Rowan said, and everyone watching knows it. Everyone in this studio knows it. The only person pretending otherwise is you. Please just sit back down, Lorraine tried again, desperation clear in her voice now. We can start over. No, Rowan said simply. No, we can't. Because you've shown exactly who you are and how you operate. And I'm not interested in being part of it. He turned and started walking toward the exit. Rowan, please, Lorraine called after him. Don't do this. He stopped and turned back to face her one last time. You did this, Lorraine? He said quietly but firmly. You invited me here under false pretenses. You attacked me on your show, and now you're dealing with the consequences. This is on you. The audience wants to hear from you, Lorraine tried, gesturing to the silent crowd. Then maybe you should have treated me like a guest instead of a criminal, Rowan replied. Maybe you should have asked real questions instead of playing gotcha journalism. Maybe you should have done your job properly. With that, he turned and walked straight off the set. The cameras followed him as he pushed through the studio door and disappeared. The door swung shut behind him with a heavy thud that echoed through the silent studio. Lorraine sat there, frozen, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. The audience was completely silent, stunned by what they'd just witnessed. The producers were shouting into their headsets, clearly in full panic mode. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody said anything. The live broadcast just showed Lorraine sitting there, looking at the empty chair across from her, the door through which Rowan had just exited, and the reality of what had just happened, slowly sinking in. The studio remained frozen in that horrible, awkward silence, with Lorraine finally looking directly into the camera. Her face, a mixture of shock and something that might have been regret, before someone finally had the sense to cut to a commercial break. But the damage was done. The entire confrontation had played out live, broadcast into homes across the country, and there was no taking it back. Rowan Atkinson had walked off the set, and Lorraine Kelly was left sitting there in the wreckage of an interview that had gone catastrophically wrong.